So I'll pick up on that. But like I said a week ago before Army, I felt if we didn't play our A game, that we would be in trouble. And that certainly played out. We didn't play as well as we needed to against Army, credit to them and their staff. But I think it was all three phases. You know, we certainly had some costly miscues in the special teams game, from the kickoff return that was called back, the long punt return we gave up. You know, offensively, we had yardage but not points. Again, our struggles in the red zone continue to haunt us. You know, we had the ball really 4 times down there and scored 1 touchdown and made 2 of 3 field goals. And there were so many opportunities in that game to capitalize after a turnover and make it a 2-score game, and we didn't do it. And then on defense in the second half, and especially the fourth quarter, just the inability to get off the field. I mean, they really had the offense running well, and they got into a lot of 3rd and shorts, and they converted them. And, you know, at halftime, I felt good. The time of possession was almost even. The second half, they had the ball 10 minutes longer than us, and that's how they play. And, again, credit to them. You know, it's disappointing, but we got to move on. We've got a very improving Virginia team coming to town this week. You know, they have a new head coach, and Bronco Mendenhall did a great job at BYU. And they've incorporated completely new schemes on both sides of the football. On offense, they're a veteran group up front. It's 3 seniors, 2 juniors. They have a transfer quarterback from East Carolina who is really playing well as of late. And they have 2 very dynamic tailbacks. Mazzell, who's been there, is a very, very good player, very dynamic, can catch the ball well. And then Reed is a transfer from Maryland, a 5th-year guy. And then they've got very big receivers that can go up and get it. So they're throwing the ball for about 264 yards a game. Defensively, it's an odd scheme again, so it's 2 weeks in a row. They're younger on defense. They've got a number of young guys, a number of freshmen and redshirt freshmen in the 2 deep, but they also have a difference maker at every level of their defense. Certainly Anthony Brown, the defensive end, you know, coming out of high school, he was the Gatorade National Player of the Year. He was considered the #1 player in the country, and he is starting to play up to his billing. The linebacker Kaiser is 2nd in the ACC in tackles, and the safety Blanding, again, was a very highly rated recruit and one of the very best safeties in the ACC. So, you know, they started out slow, but if you watch last week's game against Louisville, they really had that game won twice. You know, they went for 2 late to go up, and then they had them in a 4th and 3 and even had a lead with 14 seconds left. And Louisville hit that fade. Again, it was a very, very tough loss for Virginia, but they played their hearts out against one of the best teams in the country. So we've got to move forward, and again, we have a challenge. We're glad to be back at home, and hopefully we'll get great support again like we did a week ago. Any questions?
You talked about them implementing new schemes and all that, so obviously that's going to take some time. Where do you see the results of that? Why are they playing better on the field right now than they were doing than they were earlier today?
I mean, I haven't watched all their films, Dan. I watched the last few games, and I watched you know, the Louisville game, and I watched the Duke game. Their Duke stat line is almost exactly similar to our Duke stat line. You know, and they have you know, I think whenever things are new, you know, there's going to be some inconsistency. They have a new offensive staff, a new quarterback. You know, he transferred from ECU. He won the starting job in 15 and then tore his ACL. So this is really his first time starting. And so he's in a new system. And, you know, you just have some of that inconsistency. It's new that maybe guys aren't playing as fast as they need to, but they're certainly getting progressively better. You know, and they probably lost 2 games earlier in the year. I'm sure they'd love to have back with Richmond and UConn, but certainly the win against Duke, and they beat Central Michigan right after Central Michigan beat Oklahoma State, and they took Louisville right down to the wire. So they're playing much better, and you know, they're good coaches and they've got good players, and certainly Virginia has always recruited well. I mean, you know this by following them. Their recruiting classes were always highly ranked, and all those players are still there.
Should have played them in September.
Hey, I tell you what, if you make that last contribution to the Sports Performance Center, we'll give you some influence on scheduling.
Yeah.
I thought the question about was it all fundraised for, that you were going to get us over the top there.
Oh, yeah, you count on that.
Okay, good.
That's facetious, though. But it's so often just not who you play, but when you play them.
Yeah, yeah, but that's every year.
Exactly.
You know, that, certainly as of late, Indiana's playing really well. And, so sometimes, I think through the course of the year, Dan, those things balance out.
Yeah.
So you can't lament when you play a team. I mean, the schedule's the schedule, and you play it as it comes.
Coach, on the offensive side of the ball, numbers versus last year right now are pretty darn equal when you look at offensive yards per game.
Mm-hmm.
Are you surprised that that's the case? And if so, what do you think's been the major bugaboo there?
Well, I think the yardage is very similar. It's almost identical. How we're getting the yardage is much different. I think whenever you throw the ball more, your yardage totals are going to be higher. So when you're in a lot of games that you're behind and you're getting cheap yards by throwing it at the end, I think our yardage this year has been more meaningful yardage. We're running the ball for about 50 or 60 yards a game better than a year ago. We're scoring more points. We've scored about 3 or 4 points per game more than a year ago. We're turning the ball over less. And those are really the points of emphasis after last year, is we can't turn it over, we can't beat ourselves on offense, and we've got to run the ball better. Check, check, check. Now, the disappointment continues to be the lack of explosive plays in the passing game. I think it's very evident we're running the ball better. For 2 years I was asked, why can't you block anybody? Why can't you block anybody? Did anybody ever ask me that here? No. Okay.
I remember.
And we're blocking people, and we're not losing yardage, and we're giving up half as many sacks. Why we haven't made that jump is we're not creating explosive plays in the pass game. Last week, we rushed the ball okay, but we took 11 deep shots and completed 1 ball. And that was against an Army team that had given up some deep throws against people, and we thought those were very favorable matchups for us. So, we're not where I want us to be. I'm glad we're running the ball better. I'm glad we're giving up less sacks. I'm glad we're not turning it over as much. I'm disappointed we're not making more explosive plays in the pass game. I really thought with what we had coming back and what we saw in the spring in camp, that part of our offense would be further along than it is. And, it's a work in progress. We've got to keep working at it. We've got to get better at it. So that's, I think, where the shortcoming is.
Is that a combination of maybe the talent's not as good as you hoped to be, or was it more the execution part of it?
Everybody we play out there is a freshman and a sophomore. And I think we have guys that are capable of making plays, but we haven't done it consistently. We haven't beaten man coverage consistently. At times we beat the coverage and we threw the ball out of bounds. We didn't play well at the quarterback position on Saturday. And there were plays to be made at times that we didn't make. The one was a touchdown that we should have had. When you start adding all those things up, and it gets you off schedule. And we wanted to run the ball against Army, but once we started running it, they really started blitzing people and dropping the safety in the box and bringing the corners, and we had one-on-one matchups on the outside. And you have to, if you're going to be a good offense, you've got to win those matchups. You got to be able to protect, which we did. I thought our offensive line protected very well. We had time, and then you've got to get open and you've got to put the ball in the money. And we weren't as accurate throwing it as we needed to, and receivers didn't get the separation they have to against man coverage.
In regards to the quarterback position, we saw Kendall practicing some today.
Mm-hmm.
What's his status? Is he cleared to play?
He's not cleared to play yet. He's not cleared to play. We're trying to bring him along, and I'd love to tell you, hey, he's good to go and he can play. And it's better this week than it was a week ago, but he still has to be able to protect himself. And he's not, to me, where he was. And so, we're going to keep working him and see where we are. But, at this point, John's going to be the starter. And we'll keep trying to bring Kendall along, and we're going to keep repping Kyle Kearns. So it's, every week you hope he's a little further along, and I think he is, but he's not there yet.
Decision's not been made that he's definitely out Saturday, is he? There's still a possibility.
Yeah, there's still a possibility.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah, gotta get him back.
and again, I've said this before, the way Kendall plays and has to play, it's not like he's a 6'4", 230-pound quarterback that's going to sit in the pocket. His game is pressing the edge in the zone read game and running him, and that involves making full-speed cuts against good defenders. And if I don't feel that he can make those cuts full speed and protect himself, number one, I don't want to put him at risk. It's not fair to him. And number two, I don't think it helps our football team.
Not cleared to play by the coaching staff or the training staff?
I mean, training staff. I mean, he's got to be able to go. And, we even use Saturday as a chance to get him out there in warm-ups. Just the coaching staff doesn't clear or not clear players off of injuries. That never happens. That is always a doctor, medical training room decision. And they are evaluating him, and you see him during practice. The trainer's watching him the whole time. Yeah. And I'll consult with them. What do you think? Well, it's closer. We're not there yet, though. So.
Isn't so much of it the next day, Dave, after he's gone and practice to see how he responds overnight and all that?
Yeah, but it's also watching him during practice.
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
we know what Kendall can do when he's totally healthy. Yeah. And when you don't see that, he's not healthy.
You even entertained the notion of maybe medical red shirt. Is that kind of?
Yeah, we may get to that point, Dan, but I think right now there's still a lot of football to play. Right. There's 4 more ACC games. We're battling like crazy to try to make it 5 more, and that's a lot of football. So, I think it's premature to make any decision like that.
We talked earlier about when you play a team is so important. You brought it up in postgame, and it's so true. Wake's struggles late in the season since '08, and I looked it up. It's 5-31 the last week of October and later. Why? Why is that year after year, Dave? Do you see?
Well, I think you can give a number of reasons. I think since '08, there hasn't been a lot to play for in November. Certainly the motivation of the team. I wasn't here for 4 of those years, so you should probably ask Tommy. Maybe there were injuries or depth issues, and I think part of it is that you look at the teams you're playing. Mm-hmm. I think in this last year in the last 4 games, 3 of them were Notre Dame, Louisville, and Clemson. So I think it's sometimes the schedule gets backloaded. To me, we still have a lot to play for. A year ago at this point, there's not as much. And I think the motivation of your football team and the excitement level in the locker room certainly has an impact on how you play late. That's why I say every year one of my goals is to get to November with something to play for, because then you have more of a motivated team and more of an engaged team. So we're trying to break that history.
Depth is obviously real critical, and that's always been a problem at Wake Forest over the years. Are you better this year? You feel depth going into November than you were the last first 2 years?
Yeah, I think that will always be an issue here, because the nature of, if you're going to be a program that redshirts and you're not going to get a lot of walk-ons, your numbers aren't going to be the same. But and this it's ironic to say this, but really, other than our starting quarterback, we've been relatively healthy. So, if you look at the secondary and linebacker, and we get Amari Henderson back now, I can't get up here and cry injuries or we're not healthy. We've been relatively healthy this year. And I thought the bye week was at a great time. We certainly were a healthy team going into Army. That had nothing to do with us not playing well. And I believe we're healthy going into Virginia. So in terms of that, I think we're in really good shape.
Is it part of it changing culture? That to win in November?
Well, I've told our players that this is the first, the season is a marathon. Yeah. It's hard. Yeah. And if you go through a whole season, it's really hard to get sky high for every game. But there's got to be a level of consistency in preparation and performance. Very few teams can do that, Dan. That I would say this. I thought our guys were as locked in and sky high for Duke as I'd seen us. and not as much for Delaware, but we were better than Delaware personnel-wise, that we weren't sharp, but we were still good enough to win. Indiana, our guys were locked in. You know what I'm saying? So you're not going to be that way every single week, but you can't have those big dips. There's those weeks that you just got to have a consistency in your preparation, a consistency in your performance that allows you to win games. And I don't know if we prepared or performed the way we needed to last week against a team that we weren't that much better than, that we could play our B game.
Other than Kendall, I guess Jabari would be the one lingering question for this week?
Yeah, I'd say he's probably doubtful, but we'll see.
Okay.
He didn't practice today, and you're always hopeful, but you know, if you get to Wednesday and you didn't practice, there's a chance we're not going to have him.
Ankle, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Talked in the post-game and a little bit here just now about not really being completely comfortable and happy with preparation last week in practice. What have you seen so far in what little you did Sunday and then again today?
Today was way better. I mean, our guys had a focus and a purpose, and every rep meant something. You know, and then I told the team that when we lose collectively. And maybe as the head coach, I didn't manage the bye week as well as I should have. You know, maybe we presented them Army too early. I almost felt like late in the week, it was like, okay, enough of Army, let's go play. And there wasn't the attention to detail in practice on Wednesday and Thursday that we've had in previous weeks. And I was very concerned. And I told them that last Wednesday, that, you know, we're not as locked in as we need to be. And I did not get that sense today. And that was addressed with the whole team on Sunday. And part of it is at Wake Forest. I don't know if we're ever going to be at the point here that we're just so loaded and have all these five-star guys running around that we can just ever show up and just win the game based on talent alone. And very few teams are. You know, maybe Clemson can, or Florida State. You know, that maybe they aren't locked in, they still find a way to beat a good Troy team. You know, if we don't do things right, if we don't prepare well, if we're not locked in, you know, it's going to be hard for us to win games. But that should be one of our advantages here. You know, we, I think, get players that have maturity and have a sense of purpose and came here because they want to play football at this level. And, you know, sometimes as you're building a program, games like that can be great reminders of what you need to do and what you need to get back to in order to win games. And they're painful reminders, and they're not fun going through. But I believe our locker room is made up of guys that will respond well to that. And the response from our players wasn't, you know, they were humbled. They learned a lesson. And now you hope they apply that lesson this week in practice. And I think we'll be a much better prepared football team because of it.